Hello and welcome to Analyst Crossfire, an ISC 2011 wrap-up show featuring expert voices from the international supercomputing community giving their reactions to some of the top HPC trends as discussed at this year's conference. I'm Addison Snell with Intersect 360 Research, and I'm your moderator for Analyst Crossfire. Joining me on the panel today are two vendors and two users who volunteered to share their opinions on any supercomputing topic I care to throw their way, giving us their personal views and not necessarily those of their organizations. Representing the vendor community, first we have Jean-Marc Denis, who's the Director of HPC Operations at Bull. Hello, Jean-Marc.
Hello, Addison.
Next, we have Andrew Jones, who applies his past knowledge and experience from the University of Manchester to his current role as Vice President of HPC Services at Numerical Algorithms Group. Andrew, thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
From the user community, we have two internationally recognized, highly esteemed representatives of prestigious HPC sites. First, Michael Resch, the Director of HLRS. Welcome, Michael. And finally, from the Tokyo Institute of Technology, another perennial ISC favorite, Satoshi Matsuoka. Good afternoon, Satoshi.
Good afternoon. I'm tickled.
Panelists, thank you all for joining me for ISC Analyst Crossfire. You know the rules, and the clock is running. Let's get started. Our first topic today looks at the wide and expanding international nature of supercomputing. A lot of analysis goes into the geographical distribution of the HPC market, including which countries host the world's largest supercomputers. Yet, we also see hallmark programs involving international collaboration among a borderless scientific research community. Panelists, to what extent does it matter what country a supercomputer is in? Michael.
It's an old-fashioned question because it refers to a supercomputer as being hardware mainly. Technically, it doesn't make any difference where the supercomputer is. On the other hand, when we talk about exascale computing, we understand we need to do co-design. And co-design means that hardware people, software people, users have to work together. It would be very, very strange if we set up systems in some country and do research in a different country after we have designed these systems. So either we work together when we define these systems and then keep working together, or we say, okay, it's just some kind of hardware tool. I, for myself, would say location matters. Location is absolutely important because the location where the system is where the co-designers are, and the co-designers are the software people, and these are the guys who provide the solutions. So you need to have the system where you want to have the solutions, and in that sense it matters. Economically for a country, it depends on the kind of country you're in. And in terms of what is going to happen in the future, I mean, I'm not worried about these countries that have large-scale systems now. It's all a matter of sustainability. It's a matter of education. It's a matter of the brilliant minds that you have there.
Satoshi, your thoughts?
Well, just like cloud infrastructures, you don't really worry where your resources are. Certainly, your physical resources can be located somewhere that's advantageous, especially in this times and day when energy is important. You might be compelled to put your resources in a very energy-friendly environment, like cold places, maybe like in the U.S. would be Alaska, in Japan would be Hokkaido, it would be Europe, it would be like Scandinavia countries. But I agree with Michael that it's really about putting people together, because the assets of the centers are not just the fact that we have machines, but it's really true that the center is the centerpiece for bringing all the parties, be it users, developers, various designers of HPC together. And that's where the knowledge is accumulated and sustainable.
Andrew, I'm hearing a lot about developers and software. Your thoughts?
So I think for some applications, defense related and so on, clearly it does matter where the supercomputer goes. It would be nice to think for science it doesn't matter and there will be lots of international collaboration. But in reality it does matter where the supercomputer is, because the country hosting the supercomputer determines things like access policies, what the priorities are for the usage of that machine in terms of science machine things. And that country also has an incentive to develop a local skills base in the programmers and the support staff, and in the supporting industry ecosystem as well. So it does matter.
Jean-Marc.
I share the same opinion. It does matter a lot. A supercomputer, especially in high-end, is representative of the power of a country or a group of countries like Europe. So having the control of the supercomputer technology, of the basic technologies inside the supercomputer and of the overall supercomputer is very important for the growth of the economical region where the supercomputer is installed. So
I've been hearing a lot of increasing importance as we go down the table. How's this going to change over the next 5 years? Is there going to be a shift in the international landscape?
So some kind of prediction on where the big supercomputers would be in the future. So we see China rising. I believe they will rise a lot and more with their own technology, like Japan has done with their new system being #1. And I guess that in the next future, we should see India and Brazil joining the top 10, top 20 group.
Satoshi, you've been in the thick of a lot of this Asian rise.
Yes. Well, certainly China, and don't forget countries like Korea, of course India, that would be hosting these large-scale systems, likely precisely because the supercomputer does indicate the nation's growth and power, as well as being critically important for the well-being of the people living in the country, covering all aspects of technology from environment, energy, health, all these issues, not solvable without having large supercomputers. So investment, and don't forget Russia too. Russia could also be a powerhouse. So
I remember Russia. Michael, do you have any response?
Russia is certainly an interesting country with respect to HPC, but the question is, can you sustain these things? I mean, it's very prestigious to have your own supercomputer. It's interesting to get into this field. We have currently a situation where we have a number of companies coming up. We have brilliant people everywhere. We have brilliant people in Russia. The question for me is sustainability. Is it something which is only a 5-year effort, or is it something where people actually, or countries actually change their education systems, their research systems, their economic infrastructure and everything? If you bring these things together, yes, Russia certainly is on the agenda.
Not one of my esteemed international panel of experts mentioned the role of the United States in internationalization at all. Intersect 360 Research is forecasting strong growth in HPC overall, with North America continuing to decline in overall share as U.S. government and academic spending is hampered by the current and federal and state level budgetary constraints. Thank you, panelists, for your views. Let's move to the next issue. One of the topics put to me most often as an analyst is cloud computing. This coming September, we'll have the second annual ISC Cloud Conference specifically for cloud implementations for HPC. How do you foresee cloud computing getting adopted for HPC applications? Andrew.
So my guess is that cloud will not make its greatest impacts at the high end of supercomputing to start with. I think it will be completely the other scale, the individual, the engineer or the research scientist working on their desktop who wants to try and explore the next level of scale. The simple step using the personal credit card rather than a corporate contract to get access to a slightly higher level of computing expertise, computing power, software stack that they haven't got. I think that easy, low-risk expansion and exploration will be where cloud will make a difference to supercomputing.
Jean-Marc.
Cloud computing should extend mostly in the commercial world at first. The commercial world is driven by projects. Not having the supercomputers in the assets of the company is extremely important for cutting the price down for the commercial companies. So being able to use remote solutions, cloud HPC systems, for commercial companies for a limited period of time, for 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, just the time to develop the project, is certainly a very good approach for the commercial world.
Satoshi.
Well, certainly, I agree to some extent what my colleague said. Cloud will certainly penetrate the lower end of the supercomputing.
You said to some extent. Does that mean there's some extent to which you don't agree?
Yes, because over time, what I was going to say is that it'll allow the center to focus on the high end. However, if you look at the long-term situation, it's very likely if the supercomputing is so important for industry and so forth, the industry will pick them up and to have something for the total cost of ownership with respect to having it at a cloud center versus at your site, the cloud solution might be more appropriate. So high-end, over time, some of the high-end resources may migrate into the cloud.
Michael.
Okay, I guess I do not even accept the question. I mean, I'm a researcher, I'm running a research center. We heavily support the industry, that's all fine, but I find two things. First of all, the term cloud doesn't change anything in terms of research. I mean, we're working on certain things, we're working on making systems available, solutions available. Okay, we called it grid for a while, we call it cloud now. I don't know what we're going to call it in the future, I don't care too much. On the other hand, if we talk to industry and we explain the cloud concept, the answer that we get there from big companies is simply, so what? That's what we have done for the last 20 years. Yes, there is new technology. Yes, we can do it better, but there is no need for a term, for a new term. And so the cloud, for me, it'll go away, and I won't care a lot about that.
You certainly raise an interesting and passionate point, Michael. My own colleague, Chris Willard, actually had an analogy earlier this week saying that comparing public to private cloud was sort of like saying that Americans and Europeans both play football. The name is the same. There are some similarities. They both have a ball. They're played on a large green rectangle. There's a lot of running around, but there are some differences in implementation. How do we interpret private cloud in this regard? Building on what Michael just said, is this something new and does it make a difference? How does it make a difference? Go back down to the vendors, Jean-Marc.
Question of private cloud. I wouldn't say it makes a big difference in that case. This is really, I share some of you of Michael, a question of marketing wording, some of buzzwords, in terms of internal, external, exactly as you said. It really matters in terms of future for the implementation of that kind of cloud. An HPC cloud is first an HPC system. So you need to have an HPC solution. You need to have a supercomputer behind that cloud stuff. And it will make a big difference between the vendors and what did happen before and what's going to happen in the future.
Andrew, what's going on down there? Are the vendors changing their cloud positioning based on the user's answers?
Probably not. So I think as soon as you have to start redefining the cloud to be private cloud or our little cloud or whatever else you have to do, you're really proving Michael's point that it's all just the same stuff we used to do anyways.
Satoshi?
Well, certainly, you can look at cloud as a buzzword, but also cloud as an aggregation of various technologies like virtual machines and various types of provisioning technologies, which certainly have been around, but have been refined so that they're deployable over a large scale. So I think I would say private cloud, public clouds, whatnot. So the technology may be important. In fact, on my machine, Swami 2, we do employ some of those key cloud technologies for for benefit of the operation itself. So the technologies are definitely making it into supercomputers.
Michael, you caused a reaction. Last word's yours if you changed your mind at all.
No, I don't change my mind. I mean, public or private, we do both, and we have to do both because we work with industry and we provide access to our systems for industry. It's a matter of technology, it's a matter of processes, it's a matter of organization, it's a matter of people. You have to work on security. And what is happening actually is that you define private cloud to be something where you take away everything that is interesting in the cloud, which is public access to something, but you do nice technology. If you do your public cloud, you take away everything that would be interesting in terms of technology to make sure that everyone can access everything. And I mean, so what?
Our research has shown broader adoption of private cloud than public in HPC thus far. And interestingly, we've seen so far government sites have the highest rates of evaluation but the lowest rate of actual implementation. Thank you, panelists. Our next issue concerns the top echelons of the supercomputing market. Now that we have systems that are reaching petaflops, not only in LINPACK, but also in certain additional scientific applications, a lot of the talk has refocused on the path to exascale and how we will achieve that this decade. Now, to what extent is exascale an appropriate discussion or initiative today? Satoshi.
Well, certainly exascale, you can look at it from two aspects. It's a IT driver, and as the keynote just with a wonderful keynote mentioned, the path to exascale actually coincides with the advances that's required for these portable devices to have much more utility. The other, of course, is the survey you were doing, for example, towards exascale. There are simply some problems that are not solvable unless we have exascale systems. So it's a societal driver and also IT driver. For that perspective, I think is a very worthwhile goal to pursue.
Michael, the attention on exascale.
It's the logical next step. So you do petascale, you want to move to exascale, that's okay. And some people say it's too early to talk about it. I think it's probably too late to talk about it because the issue is software there. And the discussion we need to have is not so much on will it be 20 megawatt or 50 megawatt. The discussion is what kind of problems can we solve with exascale, and then what kind of software do we need, and then we discuss co-design with hardware. I think it is important to push that discussion, and I also think it is important to take this discussion out of the political arena. We are way too much in exascale. We're discussing about who is going to have the first system and how can we do something to have the first system either in Asia or in Europe or in the US. I think that's not relevant. I know it's a political issue, but this exascale is a huge challenge. And it's necessary that the scientists discuss this issue much more than the politicians.
We're going to go down to the vendor side. I'm hearing yes on exascale from some of the users. Jean-Marc, are you okay with that? You ready? Have you got a purchase order with you?
Yes, sure to purchase, by the way. Sorry. Exascale will require new paradigms on all aspects, from hardware to software. So the hardware part, I believe, will be the easy part of the development of exascale computing. What will be very tricky is at the user level, developing new algorithms, new mathematics, new models for being able to handle the many core CPU that you will need for running at the exascale class system, on the exascale class systems. Hardware technology will be very easy to handle. We need 3 to 5 years to develop all of that. This is why we start now developing the exascale technologies. For the software side, for the user applications, you should have started 10 years ago. Otherwise, I'm quite sure that for the most important applications, the grand challenge applications, not in back, running at the exascale level will be extremely difficult by the time the hardware will be ready.
Andrew, do you agree?
So yes, I think it is right to talk about exascale. As a society, we always chase the next goal, whether that's petascale, exascale, fusion energy, space travel, whatever. The reason we do that is goals like these drive whole ecosystems of innovation underneath them. And they're driving the innovation in the HPC system. That includes software, that includes hardware and everything else related to it. And I think what's important, though, is to recognize that exascale is not the only driver of innovation in HPC. It's one end of it's a supercomputing extreme end driver, but we also need to look at the drivers pushing the ease of use and the broadening of HPC into individual scale as well.
If there's ever a concern that we hear about it, it's whether exascale might be overly distracting us from the job of making mere terascale systems more efficient. What do you think?
No, you need both.
Jean-Marc?
I agree.
Got to do a both.
Yes.
Other thoughts on exascale?
Come on, let me say something. I think it's if you say you got to do it both, that's not enough. What you have to do is you have to make sure that you have this pyramid of performance. You have to work at the very highest end, and then you have to make sure that everything can trickle down. And trickling down, it's not about peta, it's not about tera, it's about making sure that industry can use it. And this I agree with you, because what is happening is what we do now today, any engineer will do in 10 years from now, maybe 15 years from now, on the laptop or based on some technology that allows him or her to work from the laptop. So you have to have an overall view of these things. You have to understand that you're a pathfinder, and that doesn't mean that you only have your eyes on the target in the future. It means that you have one eye looking backwards, trying to find out, are people able to follow us? Is what we're doing here useful for the general community? And I think that's important.
We've asked HPC users how many cores their largest applications runs used. The median response that we got, although it was a very broad range from very high to very low, the median response was 160 cores for the largest HPC application at a site. For typical everyday applications, the median scalability is about 40 cores. Thank you all for your in-depth insights. Let's squeeze in a few more topics here with your quicker responses as we move into our speed round. Hans Moyer, our ISC host, began publishing his list of supercomputers in 1986. These are the precursors to the modern top 500. 25 years later now, how relevant or important is the top 500 list today, Jean-Marc?
Well, I would like to change a word in your question. It's not the top 500 list that is important. This is the top 500 ecosystem. All the information inside the top 500, all the information around the top 500 are extremely important, extremely relevant. We have a track record across the last, how long? 20 years? 22 years. And it's going to be there for the next many years, for sure. Just because we have some historical view of everything. The countries, the technology, the power consumption, the efficiency, all of that is absolutely relevant. Not only the Air Max or
Speed round, Jean-Marc. Andrew?
Sorry.
So yes, any metric that has 25 years of consistently measured data is going to produce useful information. As well as telling us trends in the industry, it tells us what is possible at any one time and what has been done and what works.
Vendors say it's relevant. Satoshi?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say the top 500 will outlast, hopefully will outlast OnSword, everybody else. Right? That's what will be valuable. What I say is don't overestimate top 500, but don't underestimate the top 500.
What do you think, Michael?
Statistically relevant, politically very interesting, because you can use this to whip up your politicians. But in terms of telling us anything about the quality or where we stand or how good we are doing in terms of solution, sorry, it doesn't help us in any way.
Now, as we're looking at some of the changes on top 500, many of the systems making a splash there are now GPU enabled. Is GPU computing the HPC architecture of the future, Michael?
The answer is definitely no. The GPU technology is very interesting, but I don't expect that we see any breakthroughs by using GPUs. We see breakthroughs by using the technology that we currently have in GPUs.
Satoshi?
Well, so I have lots in my machine. GPUs, many core in disguise. So many core, heterogeneous core, that is throughput core plus latency core. This is going to be the future. So whatever you call it, could be GPU, could be CPU, whatever. Yes.
Andrew?
I agree. Very highly parallel devices will be the future. GPUs are probably not the final evolution of that, or the only evolution.
Jean-Marc?
I'm sorry to say that I just share exactly the same perspective. GPU is a technology enabler for exascale computing and for the next generations of CPU or programming model.
This is another area where we're seeing a lot of adoption, but we're also trying to measure how many GPUs are using what percent of the workflow. By the end of our GPU forecast, the more interesting question as some of these accelerators move closer to the processors could be something like which is the dominant architecture, x86 versus ARM. But let's move to the final speed round question. I'm going to give you each a series of application segments, and you've got to play analyst as to whether or not you're going to count these. For each one, all I want you to do is tell me yes or no if it is or is not an HPC application. Here's the first one. The servers behind massive multiplayer online games. Is that HPC or not HPC, Andrew?
Yes.
How about Jean-Marc?
Yes.
Those are both HPC. User side. Satoshi?
Yes.
No.
See how much fun this is? Next one, animation rendering on a grid of PCs. Is that HPC? Jean-Marc?
No.
Andrew?
Yes.
No.
No, that's just grid computing.
Financial risk management models in Microsoft Excel running on a cluster of servers. Michael?
No.
Yes, because Excel front end and it has run on the full Tsubame.
Uh-huh. Andrew?
Absolutely.
Jean-Marc?
Yes, it is HPC computing.
Uh-huh. Computer-aided engineering, you think this is an easy one now, hang on a second. CAE on a dual-socket quad-core desktop system, HPC or not? Satoshi?
Would have been 20 years ago, but...
Not anymore. Andrew?
Depends, but if you force me, yes.
Jean-Marc?
No, it's not HPC.
Not HPC on a desktop. Michael?
If you use the desktop as a front end to a real supercomputer, it is.
Last one, big one here. Google's search engine infrastructure, HPC or not, Andrew?
I've said yes to everything else, so I'll say yes to this.
There you go. You're putting it all in, letting your clients decide which ones they count. Jean-Marc?
yes for the way they manage the energy, no for the rest.
Michael?
No, because an infrastructure is not an application. Sorry for that.
Satoshi?
Well, yes, the algorithm they use is inherently actually very much akin to what HPC does.
Excellent. Thank you, panelists. We made it through the speed round. We're going to do one final question around the table. I call this category one up, one down. You've had a chance to experience the full ISC 2011 show. Tell me now, each of you, what was one thing that surprised you in a positive way, or one winner, something in the winner column, but also one thing that perhaps disappointed you, or you expected something better? One up, one down. I'll start with Jean-Marc.
So the winner is the event itself. ISC has been the largest ever. Many people, thousands of people. The exhibition was absolutely great. So clearly the clear winner this year is ISC.
How about one down?
All the people not have been attending the event.
Total cop-out answer. Everyone here is going to agree with apple pie and kittens. Andrew, you got anything better?
So I think that the winner is probably going to have to be the K computer. It's the thing that most people have been talking about most this week, and of course it's a great technical achievement as well. I think the loser, strangely, is GPUs. With the interest around the Intel Mic stuff this year, and with the proof that by the K computer that you can do both power and performance efficient computing without GPUs at that scale, I think GPUs have had a much quieter role this year than they have over the last 2 years or so.
Jean-Marc, I'll let you react to those, since you didn't really, you said ISC wins and everyone who's not here doesn't win. What do you think of Andrew's choices?
It's a good choice. It's a good choice. No, really, it's a good choice. I share your opinion, Andy, about GPU this year. Yeah, GPU was expected to be the next big thing for building systems above 5-10 petaflops. And now we have a CPU-based system at 8 petaflops, which is quite massive and very impressive.
Satoshi, one up, one down from your perspective at this year's ISC conference.
Well, I have to say, as a Japanese, of course, K, I've known the details for a long time, so it's a wonderful achievement that we have come earlier than people expected. So that's, I think that's a wonderful achievement. It was several months ahead of the plan, whereas and I think, well, I'd like to be cute and try to say people who are not attending this panel, but I think the real loss is the impetus that the U.S. has lost with respect to the next generation machines, because it was both K and those machines were being planned at the same time, where K was able to go early, the US machines are late.
I will insert myself here that with K, I think a few things that get lost were that, first of all, a year and a half ago, a few of the vendors were pulling out of that project before Fujitsu stepped back in. And second of all, I think there was something about some earthquake or something recently. And yet this system comes in early. I think that was a very impressive surprise. Michael, you got the last word?
No, thank you. That's fine.
One up, one down.
I'll join in with saying that the winner comes from Japan. I would personally pick Himeno-san and Watanabe-san, because I saw them really suffering with this project for years and years with politics and technology and everything. And I think it's a real achievement that they made this project happen and finally brought it to Hamburg. The loser, well, there are no losers, there are never any losers in supercomputing. We are all great, we are all fantastic. So the only loser might be Hamburg, because I heard that in the year 2013 we will not be in Hamburg anymore, so Hamburg is the big loser.
I have been delighted to be in Hamburg the last few years. Panelists, that concludes ISC Analyst Crossfire, and with it, the 2011 ISC Conference. I'd like to invite our audience to look for Analyst Crossfire again at the conclusion of the ISC'11 Conference from Seattle this November, where I'll be joined by another esteemed panel of experts on a new set of HPC topics. I'd like to again thank my panelists, Michael Retsch, Satoshi Matsuoka, Andrew Jones, and Jean-Marc Denis, for joining me and sharing their insights, as well as Hans Moyer and the organizers for another successful ISC conference. For Analyst Crossfire, I'm Addison Snell with Intersect 360 Research. Thank you.